22 regular meeting of the Marysville Board of Education. We previously called the meeting to order, and right now on our agenda we are to the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you all stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I would accept a motion to adopt our agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keck. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. Let's see. I don't think we have any public participation. Doesn't look like it. All right, so next on our agenda, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Joy Bingman and Ms. Dawn Wright. If you'd like to come either to the podium or you want to come up to the, I guess, either, yeah, if you want to come to that podium there where Jonathan is.
Button until it turns red, so you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Dawn Wright. She's one of our coordinators. I think you all know me. I'm Joy Bingman. I've worked at the high school previously, but I've worked about 20 years with EF Exchange Year and taking tours with the kids internationally because I saw that our kids, is it okay to call students kids?
Young adults.
Good. That they were really not getting the advantages of some of the other big schools and big cities with the different cultures. But Dawn's one of our exchange student coordinators. We've got about 13 here in Mid-Ohio, and we nominated the district based on the criteria that they ask for the Global Award of Excellence. And I wanted to say, you know, we've had the chance to work with a lot of schools over the time, and a lot of them are just good, just real good schools. But several years ago, we ran into a school. Do you have it? Oh. Mm-hmm. We ran into a school several years ago up north, and I don't mean Michigan, I mean Ohio. They would not take Asian students, period. And this was just about 6 or 7 years ago. So it seemed like such a dark age thing, and it really started making me appreciate when I started thinking about the other schools and what they do and don't allow, or yes, allow, that I realized how good we do have it. And a couple of the things that I had submitted for consideration for the school district was the World Study, Bunshold, the World Studies program. They have Japanese and Spanish offered. Personally, someday I'd like to see that down in the littler ages, but it's so good to be in the middle school age. As you know, our Japanese program was recognized as the largest in the state of Ohio. And I hope that that stays that way, because that is something I think quite proud to be, something to be very proud of. The educational tours, I know before I even started working, Mr. and Mrs. Gala would take students, I think it was on ski club trips and scuba diving, things like that. But we started in 2011 actually taking students out of the country so they could experience being away from their parents, having to think in a controlled environment and experiencing other things. So I know we had the big exchange programs for years with French, Japanese, Spanish, and one year we brought a bunch of Mexicans in, and that's the year we got to host for the, for 3 weeks. Connie Strebe had spearheaded that. But the educational tours has really changed a lot of lives. Parents have given us that information back after the tours, and the students have as adults. At the high school, there's a Japanese club. I think they presented last meeting, and the Spanish Club and the Global Scholars Program, I think, is such a nice addition to the high school to be able to do that. And the Global Studies, Mr. Sundermeyer, I know, teaches that, and our Tom from Austria this last semester had that course, and he loved it. He said it was just educational for him to hear how it was presented there, but the discussion. And Ms. White had global foods. I hope that continues because I know a lot of the students really appreciated that. I don't know why that would make cooking more fun, but it did. And I would just like to thank, as would Dawn, all the coaches and teachers and staff that accept our students because they don't have to. And they're just excellent at taking the students in and helping them learn a sport or get better at a sport. And the teachers, of course, are always, I think, very gracious to our students. And just that our students, our kids, learn, I think, a lot from being exposed to this. I remember several years ago, the boy that was in our house said, "I can't believe the question I was asked today." One of the students at the high school asked how long it took me to come over in the boat. That student had no clue, and that's why we love doing this, because some of us aren't as blessed as others to get sometimes even out of the state of Ohio. So, all that being said, the EF Foundation decided that Marysville needed to be recognized. So thank you. And you want to take that up?
Sure.
But I do appreciate all the students that we've had over the years.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, too, in addition to what Joy had said. And we had added the STEM school in just about 5 years ago, and that has been absolutely well-received, wonderful, wonderful experience. I think we've only had about 4 or 5 years of kids there, but they have loved it. And also, in addition to the coaches and the other teachers that have so welcomed the students, I had one of my German students 3 or 4 years ago now. He was welcomed into the band. I had no idea that they would bring him in. So it was just wonderful. So we thank you so much and look forward to many, many, many more years. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dawn.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I know I got to travel overseas in college, and I can attest to the benefits of it. It's just amazing. There's just some things that you can't get from books or, classroom studies and stuff.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
really appreciate everything that you do, too. So
Absolutely. We'll get our photo.
Yeah, while Joy's getting here, I know as a classroom teacher, foreign students just enliven the class and bring a great perspective to all the discussions. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All you
Yes,
do. I
thank you.
know.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great programs.
Thank you.
Really nice. Oh, yeah, here, I'll take that. Thanks. Thanks again. That's a nice way to start, isn't it? And I mean, we know it's all about the students, and just those experiences are priceless. So really appreciate it. Okay, we are now to our reports. For the High Point report, I think you should all have received the email from Mr. Cox. He had to, he's out of town again tonight, but he sent the update. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him. Superintendent's report, Ms. Allen.
Okay, I just have a few things and then 2 presentations on my part. So Brian and Ashley and Mark, if you want to just kind of head this way, my beginning won't take long. I wanted to give you a staffing update. We have 6 open positions in the tech department, 2 aides. Actually, I think we probably took care of 1 before I walked in here, so we're probably down to 5. And a custodian that will not be an opening until September due to a retirement, and a bus driver. So all teaching positions right now are filled, so that's great news. As you know, in the summer, I tend to go just to kindergarten enrollment because we have a lot of ebb and flow going on. Right now, our kindergarten is sitting at 378. Last year at this time, we were at 419, so we are a little lower than we were, and we know last year's class was exceptionally large. I wanted to give you, I don't have too much information in terms of an update for East and Edgewood, except our asbestos abatement is complete. And prior to that, our tenants had vacated the building, so we have finished the asbestos, and we had a design meeting last week, and so we continue to kind of make decisions on spaces, what they may look like, finishes. They brought samples in, so that project is continuing to move forward. I also wanted to just kind of highlight, as you know, the beginning of the school year is right around the corner. So August 15th is convocation. I think I sent you an email about that. It starts at 8 a.m. Will be weather provided. We'll be in Impact Stadium is our hope. Also, August 6th, we're excited to bring back the First Time Rider event. So from 9 to 12, we've kind of publicized that for students who have not been on a school bus before. We'll have the opportunity to kind of learn the rules and have an opportunity to take a ride. So from 9 to 12 at Impact. August 17th is staggered start, grades 1 through 8. Last names A through M. It's also Freshman Day. Kindergarten readiness appointments run that week. August 18th is staggered start 1 through 8, N through Z, and all grades 9 through 12 attend. On the 19th, it's everybody is in session, and those kindergarten appointments, as I mentioned, run that entire week. So when you go to the 22nd, we have Alt K, all kindergarten, a full complement of students coming in the door. So we've been very successful at the staggered start. It's a great way to kind of get kids acclimated, settled in before bringing everyone on board. So I also wanted to talk briefly I guess it was last month by this point, I did have the opportunity to engage in public participation at the city council meeting and made a request for us to extend our SRO agreement to include our elementary buildings that are in town. Those conversations have continued since that time. I've had a couple of conversations and meetings with Tony Brooks, and they are planning a public work session to discuss that SRO situation, from my understanding, on August 1st at the city building at 6 p.m. So I wanted to make sure that you were informed about that as well. So I'll keep you up to date on those discussions moving forward. Also, one thing I would say is with an August 1st date, if we are moving forward, I would not anticipate the city having ample time to post, hire, and be able to move in those positions. So we have informally talked about ways we might create some additional coverage in the building, in the elementary buildings, with the absence of those positions being filled. So I will continue to keep you updated on how that conversation transpires. Additionally, tonight we have two presentations. Mark and Ashley are going to give you an update on our school report card data, and then Ryan Walker is going to talk to you about a new program that we're bringing into the district that really is highly aligned, I think, to our strategic plan and kind of that eagerness we heard from parents in our survey to reconnect, but it also kind of provides some additional security. So we'll talk about both of those things. All right?
Great, thank you.
We'll start with Ashley and Mark's.
Hello, Ashley and Mark. Welcome again.
I would informally say that this might be Ashley's last board meeting.
I know. Yep.
All right.
Okay, so we're just going to give you a preliminary state of schools update, and there are several things that we want to point out to bring your attention to. Mark is going to explain some key revisions to the state report card, which we actually like. We're going to provide a district executive summary, drill down to overall predicted school performance. We'll take a look at achievement, and then lastly close out with gap closing and any questions you might have.
As Ashley had mentioned, I did want to highlight some of the key revisions that will be coming to the Ohio School Report Card for 2022. And the first is that we will be moving away from a letter grade system for the state of Ohio for schools and moving to a star-based system. So previously you would have seen A through F for different components of the school report card, and now you will see stars taking their place. Another significant update is the change to the achievement component of the state report card. So previously, 25% of our achievement score came from our achievement indicators, and we would earn an indicator each time we had a rate of proficiency that was 80% or greater for a particular test, okay? That would be 25% of the score. 75% of the score would then come from the performance index. And performance index is a weighted percentage of the students that fall into a particular testing outcome. So for example, if a student was proficient on a test, they would earn 1 point towards the performance index. And then that total for the district or for a school building would then be divided by 120 possible points. Okay, that was the old metric. The change is in the denominator. So we still earn points the same way across all of our buildings, our district, et cetera, but the denominator will be different, the number that we divide by. And rather than being 120, it is now based upon the average for the top 2% of school districts or schools for the state of Ohio. So schools are held against their own performance index denominator, and districts are held against their own as well. So for example, it is 107 and a quarter of a point right now is our denominator, which is actually good for us in that regard. And then the last and final significant change is on the early literacy component. It used to be called improving at-risk K-3 readers on our report card, which was our percentage of K-3 students that improved to on track after being identified as off track in grades K-3 based upon our reading diagnostics. The shift is that now becomes a 3-part component, and it's the early literacy component. 40% of our score will now come from our rate of proficiency on the 3rd grade Ohio State Test of Language Arts. Okay, 25% of that score will then be the percentage of K-3 students that moved from off track to on track, so like the old metric, and then 35% of our score will come from the percentage of students that met the criteria to be promoted to 4th grade, whether on the Ohio State test or an alternative measure of reading performance. So those will be the most significant changes to the Ohio School Report Card for the upcoming school year. And so that will be reflected in our 2022 local report card at the district and building levels. Okay, so I wanted to also give you an executive summary of district level performance, and Ashley will be talking a little bit about the buildings here momentarily. And I have the 3 reported indicators that are currently available on our secure data center through the state of Ohio. So this is what our local report card looks like right now. And for the achievement component, we are sitting at 4 stars out of a 5 possible stars. And we have seen achievement improvement across 13 of 20 tested areas in our district. So pretty significant improvements there. In terms of gap closing, we will be 5 stars with regards to gap closing, and that is buoyed by very high-level performance in language arts and mathematics amongst our subgroups relative to their annual measurable objectives outlined by the state of Ohio. And AMO, or annual measurable objectives, are the point values that the state of Ohio allocates on the performance index for particular subgroups. So, and I'll go into details on each one of those a little later. As well as how we address chronic absenteeism, meeting our English learner progress targets, our graduation rate, and our gifted achievement. So all of those things kind of buoyed that gap closing component for Marysville schools. With regards to early literacy, we are sitting at 3 stars right now, and that is primarily impacted by the percentage of students that moved from off track to on track in grades K through 3 at the present time. So I kind of put in a little historical data there. So in 2019, we moved 57.7% of our at-risk K through 3 students from off track to on track, and for the current year, that number was 38.7% for this year. And then for our graduation rate, we will also receive 5 stars, and that's driven by our 4- and 5-year graduation rates. Anything over 96.5% on the graduation rate between those two metrics, 4- and 5-year graduation rates, will earn you 5 stars in the state of Ohio.
Okay, so this drills down into what the building performance looks like right now. So this is a look at our elementary schools. You can see the achievement component. There we have 2 5-star buildings, which I'd like to congratulate Mill Valley and Northwood so far. 4 stars is amazing still, especially considering the conditions we've been through. And then I'm extremely proud, like Mark said, of the gap closing. We were 5 stars in all 5 elementary buildings. And again, that is related to the annual measurable objectives among our subgroups.
Could I add actually,
Yeah.
Could we go back for just a second? I did want to add one note. I am keeping my eye on Edgewood Elementary. Depending upon how the denominator for the performance index shifts, and it continues to shift on the school and district levels, depending on how that shifts, Edgewood Elementary may become a 5-star school building before this is all said and done. So we are very close. We're within 2.5 percentage points right now from being a 5-star building.
Thank you. Then this is actually our 512 layout, Creekview coming in with 4 stars and 5 stars for gap closing, actually in all buildings in the district. Bunsold and MECHS at 4 stars and 5 stars, and then MHS at 3 stars. So we we'll be sharing this with our building principals, and some already have this information and are making plans, but I think the district is sitting in a really good place to move forward next year. So very pleased, especially with gap closing.
Okay, and I had just a couple more notes I wanted to make sure I touched on before. No, it's okay. We can go to the achievement part. That's all right. I did want to say that with advanced placement exams incorporated into, our overall test results, we are currently sitting at an estimated performance index of 87.4%. If you attain 90%, that is a 5-star rating through the state of Ohio. So we're 2.6% estimated away from being a 5-star district at the present time. And what is interesting is in 2019, our performance index, we actually beat our 2019 performance index by 6.3 percentage points this year relative to the spring of 2019. And what's I found, I did a little digging, so 2.6%, that's the difference between now and potentially being a 5-star district. That would be 191 tests that are proficient or better across all of the tested areas. So, as we look forward, into the upcoming school year, that's kind of our charge, is to make sure that we're moving students in that regard. Okay, so let's talk achievement.
Can I interrupt one second?
Yes.
One thing one board member had sent me an email, and I want to remind the group, we keep talking about things are changing. We're in this cycle of what we call data cleanup. So there are rules that we have to follow, that a kid may count for a building. They could count for a building and the district. They could count for the district only. They may end up going to a different district, or so there's this period of time where people are cleaning up who counts. It's called Where Kids Count. And so that's why you're going to see the stars across the bottom. Like, none of these numbers are final. Now, they could be, like in a couple weeks when everything's done, it still could be the same number. But I think it's important to know there could be some fluctuation. And it normally tends to increase in that process. I won't say you won't ever, but you rarely see a decrease in that time.
So really, just to clarify that, that's for students who maybe started here and then halfway through the year they moved somewhere else, or vice versa, something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's other caveats
okay.
into that, like dumping the AP scores in.
Right.
Those types of things. So students in third grade take a score in the fall and the spring, well, the higher score counts. So it's all of those caveats that go into that data cleanup. So Mark and Jen and the principals are talking on a very regular basis to try to make sure that we have everything covered the way we should.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk achievement. Across language arts, we actually have a mix of significant improvement, some marginal change, not relative change, and then a significant impact in 8th grade language arts for language arts overall. And kind of just to help orient yourself, the last column all the way to the right is what will highlight the change from last year to this year in the achievement percentage. Go to, mathematics. Math, very similar to language arts in that we have a mix of significant improvement in some areas, some marginal change in others, and some significant impact as well. Oh. And then our last area here, when it comes to science and social studies, achievement performance, we also have a mix of improvements and marginal change, in some instances regression as well, relative to last spring. Okay, so this is the gap closing part of the presentation, and it says annual measurable objectives up there. And again, those are the targets that are defined by the state of Ohio for each of the subgroups that are listed on this particular table. And what I can say with absolute pride is in every single subgroup category, Marysville schools exceeded the state target for that particular subgroup. In language arts, and we exceeded every target by at least 12 points across the board. And if you could please go to the next slide. And in mathematics, we also exceeded every single target by a minimum of 10 points across all subgroups. So we are closing the gap. That was our goal through the course of this school year, was to start playing essentially catch up and addressing the systemic needs of our students as a result, of some of the learning loss that we experienced throughout the pandemic window. And we are keeping good on that target.
Do we have any questions from the board? Questions or comments? Other than, I couldn't be more proud. And obviously that's a result of a lot of hard work with our staff members, and along with the teamwork that you guys provide with all the different data resources. So it's amazing. Great work.
Yeah, I noticed that, obviously everybody's aware that the pandemic and our hybrid systems and all that kind of stuff, while they were the best we could do, it was not what we wanted, and it certainly impacted all of our students across the board. But coming out of that, I know I was looking to see, where our students are and where they're going, and where they are is a good place, and where they're going seems to be much better. And so thank you very much for all the hard work in putting this information together. It's nice to be able to take thousands and thousands of pieces of data and drill it down to 5 stars. So thank you.
I'd also like to say thank you for all your hard work, and it goes to prove that we're good at the gap closing thing. I mean, all this data shows that we know how to do that. So even after the pandemic, we knew how to take those steps right away. There was no learning curve with that, and we'll be able to continue that into the next couple years, because for some kiddos, it's probably going to take a couple years to get caught up to where they really are back on track. And I have full confidence that where we had some declines, there'll be plans put in place for this year to handle those situations, to again work on closing those gaps. So thank you again for your hard work.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing, because, when you see these are all aggregate numbers, but to me, the most important thing is I know that there's data for every single student there, and that's, when we think about our personalized learning, that even if you have an average on there that's looking really good, if there's a handful of kids that are struggling, I know that our buildings are aware of that, and they're putting whatever supports or resources in place that are needed. So I just think it's important everybody knows that. We don't just look at the big pictures, right, or the big numbers. So thank you again. Any other questions? Nope.
I just want to say thank you. I know last night I sent a bunch of questions because we had a chance to look at this presentation, and so I thank you for giving some very detailed answers to that. I apologize for the list of questions, but it was helpful to understand this report. So just wanted to say thank you publicly. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I would just piggyback, if I could, on what Mrs. Savage said. I think the principals are fully aligned and ready to go. We're meeting with all of them the first week in August, to kind of see their finalized plan for going into this year. But when we spent time in the spring together, they were on target. It looked at their data, they were ready to go. They've developed plans. They know the pieces that, with COVID, we had to give up some things, and sub shortages and different things like that. So I'm really excited to see this year come to life.
There's one more thing I also wanted to add. The test scores are one component, and it's great that we can have that, but we have assessments occurring all year long at every grade level. So there's a whole flurry of data on every student behind this data.
Sure.
Just for the public's and maybe some of my education, when you look at the achievement, can you, I guess, just explain the achievement rating and the gap closing? The gap closing is very kind of clear, but for example, if someone looks at the Marysville High School and sees 3 stars, can we explain what that really means, and then the confidence of the gap closing, or those 2 ratings combined?
Sure. I'll start with gap closing, if that's okay. So gap closing is completely built around the percentage of subgroups that meet or exceed the annual measurable objective target for the state of Ohio. And the annual measurable objective targets, outlined by the Ohio Department of Education, are based upon the number of performance index points that you attain as a school district for that particular subgroup. So when we talk PI, or performance index, a student that tests limited, their test is worth 0.3 performance index points. A student that tests basic is 0.6, proficient is 1, accelerated is 1.1, and advanced is 1.2. There's also an advanced plus category, which is, for example, a student that is in 8th grade taking algebra, which is an advanced course for them that also tests advanced, now counts as 1.3 for that particular student. Those values for every single one of those subgroups across every single one of the tests that they take all get added up. right, which will give us an aggregate total, and then that will be divided by the either in one instance the district or the building's performance index denominator, which again is based upon the average of the top 2% of school districts or schools across the state of Ohio. So that's just for subgroups, right? And so if you have, let's say you have 10 subgroups, we have more than that, but just to keep the numbers round, if you have 10 subgroups and you met the target for language arts across 7 of those 10, you would get a 70% for language arts. You know, if you have 20 between that, you know, then you would have, you know, let's say 14 of the 20, that would be our percentage then for gap closing. And we need to be above 90%, you know, on the total number of subgroups that we attain AMO on in order to get the 5 stars for that. When it comes to achievement, it's very, very similar, but it's not based upon the subgroup categories or, you know, the targets that specified by the state of Ohio. It is purely based upon the performance index. So we take every single test for every single building for the entire district, adding up their points the same way that I just outlined for gap closing. So, you know, each placement within the test gets a point allocation. That's all added up, and then that ends up getting divided by the denominator. Yep.
And the denominator is the change.
And the denominator is the change for this year. Yep. And so I want to have at least 90% or higher on my performance index in order to earn those 5 stars. Yep.
The only thing I would add to that is just, I think Ms. Savage made a great point. You know, we're monitoring where kids are, and sometimes kids don't test well. And sometimes that achievement test isn't actually what a kid's produce throughout the year. So it's just one point in time. I always try to emphasize that with the staff. And quite honestly, I think I put in the email to you, it's kind of like an autopsy because the year's over and you have a new group of kids. But it's the doctor's appointments on the way, checking your blood pressure, you know, iReady, some of those different assessments we do that help make us make mid-course corrections and help do interventions or extensions to help throughout the year, which I personally find more impactful when we look at those growth measures as opposed to just a straight achievement score. So that would be my only caveat. And our growth measures will probably be out in September, I would guess.
For value added, yes. Yeah, value added is the only data that has not been reported on the secure data site right now, along with college and career and workforce readiness.
Yeah.
Okay, and I thought of one other thing. You guys, how about a standing ovation for Ashley? You know how much we appreciate you, Ashley.
Yes, I feel very appreciated and lucky to have served here.
Wow. Thank you very much, and best wishes. We know you're not too far away. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next presentation, Mr. Walker.
Good evening, everyone. A few months ago, Diane and I were doing a lot of back and forth, just talking about security and safety and things like that. And we started talking about the idea of volunteer program to help us both meet some of the needs of our strategic design goals, but also just in response to a lot of things that have been happening lately. Obviously, we're aware of those things. It turns out that Diane had a familiarity with a program called Watchdogs. Watchdogs is dads of great students, and it's a nationwide program that is really based on the concept of improving relationships and school safety and connections within schools through family engagement, specifically through dads, hence the name Dads of Great Students. And the idea was to get more of male involvement within schools in a lot of different ways. But Watchdogs are fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and other father figures who volunteer for at least one day each year at an official watchdog school. So we have partnered with Watchdogs, and part of the idea of that is they have a template that is already available for us to follow, a framework and a philosophy that we can kind of plug into and be a part of a bit of a community across the country when it comes to volunteers with an eye towards safety. Watchdogs program has been recognized by the United States Department of Education, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, and has been involved in the U.S. Department of Education's Partnership for Family Involvement in Education, and the department's Safe School Summit. So when we started talking about how can we get folks involved in our schools and what are some things we can do to add layers to the other items that we've addressed as far as safety goes, and we talked about the idea of a volunteer program, it just made sense to kind of plug into something that's proven to work. I spent a good amount of time talking with one of the directors for the Watchdog program. They're based out of Texas now, I believe. I felt very comfortable with their what they believed this program was about, what they believed it could provide for us, and ultimately, and Diane and I talked about this quite a bit as well, clearly it's a fit for us, particularly with a lot of the things we identified through the strategic plan, which you all are aware of. When it, safety, school safety is really sort of morphed with the idea of engagement and mental wellness and well-being of students. Mark and I are working quite a bit together with the threat assessment teams in the world of physical security is really starting to overlap with the idea of identifying student needs. So why we're talking about this with an eye towards security, it gives us additional adults in the building. So if I imagine, one of the volunteers coming in, I think of things like checking doors and having an eye towards kids that might be sort of lost in the hallway, helping visitors get to where they need to be. Just another set of a conscientious adult male in the building, just to help with those sorts of things. Somebody that might even be able to respond in situations where kids are clearly not maybe behaving well with each other. And what that also gives us is the sort of the return trip on the volunteer gaining a greater understanding of what the student needs are in the building. And the hope that through this experience, what they might see is what kids see on a daily basis, both what they thrive in and what they struggle in. And that can provide them context when they go home and they're talking to friends and neighbors about how do we listen to kids? How do we see what they're dealing with? Because ultimately, when we talk about safety and security these days, it really is about prevention and listening to kids and identifying, what kids need help. So I'm looking at, we're kind of looking at this with an eye towards we can check doors and somebody that can help with daily activities and be another presence in the building and, God forbid, help to respond in certain situations. However, this provides an opportunity to go far beyond that. And if we can get volunteers that maybe repeat or become regular, they can develop relationships with kids and families over time. And, we can just, again, add another layer of connections that kids have. Mark and I were talking about the other day about how one of the common attributes to a lot of kids who tend to show show some of the issues, they're not connected. And the more people we can get into this equation, the more connections we can make and perhaps the more help we can provide to kids. And this obviously deals specifically with providing positive male role models in the building and in the students' lives. Again, we're talking father figures. I appreciate that while the acronym is Dads of Great Students, they recognize that there are other folks that can sort of stand in that role for students. So, I hope that folks who hear about this, whether it's through listening to the board meeting or reading about what we're doing, if they're interested, they might not feel too hemmed into the idea of being an actual, parent to a student. But certainly, parents to students is a great way to just reinforce that connection, not just their own students, but their friends, and they would, again, get some context to the student day from a personal perspective. The other, another component of this, and one thing I really like about the Watchdog program and the way they built it is, we'll be asking a volunteer for each building to really step up and be a team lead for us as well. So someone that could act as a liaison between the building principal, myself, even the SROs, and can help guide not just sort of today's volunteer, but volunteers that come and really hopefully promote and endorse the program and try to increase the frequency and the volume of folks that we have willing to participate with that. So something you might wonder with this, and I know I did at the beginning, is you walk in the building, what really does that even look like for someone to come in and volunteer in this capacity? Well, first of all, I would say the 8th, 9th, and 10th of August, we're going to have an informational meeting that will run through expectations. Obviously, we have to do things like background checks, and we'll inform folks of that. But at those meetings, I will kind of outline what a day might look like. Different principals might approach it in different ways. Some might want folks, particularly if people are repeat volunteers, might have a hope for folks to help out with certain academic tasks, but just in a nutshell, what a day might look like, and again, this is consulting with the folks who run the program. I am no principal, I don't pretend to be one. I don't want to sit in their shoes, but just to give you an idea of what it could look like, if you can read through that, but the idea of providing assistance for daily drop. I don't think you'll ever find a principal who's going to say, hey, we're good at drop off and pick up. We don't need any more help. I'm sure they'll take it. So to help out with that, and of course, that's also an immediate connection, greeting students as they come in and, again, providing another familiar and safe face for kids as soon as they get off the bus. Assisting or identifying different areas that the principal might need some help during the day. And I do want to stress, and I put it on there, this is not really an office worker. This is somebody to be out and about in the building to provide that, someone's, the image of a safe and supportive and an adult that kids can go to, and staff for that matter. Circulate the building, checking doors, checking various components of the building, just again, that eye towards safety and security. Eating lunch, even with their own student, having that opportunity, again, on a personal level to gain context of what that student day looks like. Again, circulating the building, assisting with other lunches and recess, visiting other classrooms, circulating the building again, helping at dismissal. And as this evolves, again, as folks become more familiar with, everybody gets more comfortable with what's happening, other general responsibilities may arise. But all with an eye towards safety, but with an eye towards, again, this layered approach that we're taking of going beyond just locked doors and hardening the buildings. I read an article the other day, you can only harden a school building so much before it just becomes something that we don't want school buildings to be. So this gives us an opportunity to really build on the idea of prevention and relationships and providing more adults, particularly again men, that kids might see out in their community. They're walking their dog, here's another person that I can talk to. And also providing that context on the way back to say, this is what I need to be looking for when I listen to my own kids or their friends, or I'm looking at Facebook and things like that. So I think we really see this as a positive opportunity to provide, as I've said, another layer of what we're doing to make our schools safer. Again, I want to encourage anyone that hears this or reads about this to look for the form that's going out that will invite people to the meetings on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Feel free to reach out to me if they have any questions. But we're really looking to be able to start this very early in the school year. Even before the end of August, if we can. So hopefully we'll have some team leads identified in the next few weeks. Those meetings, hopefully we'll have a good start with getting people signed up. and we'll be able to kick this off, in late August. The other nice thing we get about Watchdogs is they do provide us with some materials and T-shirts and things like that, so that the volunteers do feel like they're sort of a part of the team in the building, and give them, again, it's not just a framework for us, it's also a framework for the volunteers, so they realize that they're just sort of plugging into, we're not reinventing this every time somebody comes in. So I believe that's it, kind of in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Is this something that you see in every building, like elementary through high school?
That's the way we're looking at it.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, the meetings that are set up, the 8th is K through 4 at Northwood. The 9th is Creekview and Bunsold at Creekview. And the 10th are the high schools at ECHS, and those are all at 6:30.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I think you answered one of the questions I had. Training materials that get into how to conduct yourself, how to talk to students, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so obviously, we're not looking for Batman to come into the schools here. We want part of those meetings is, if you're not comfortable around kids, we appreciate the willingness to show up and talk to us about it. But really, this is about relationship first and foremost. So that's a big part of the training, and that's part of why I think the Watchdogs program is so appealing, is that it recognizes that it's about connecting with the students. So, that first meeting we'll go into that, and then the materials that we're able to share with them through the Watchdog program, it really talks about appropriate ways to address students and what it means to kind of be in a school building. And I will say too, it's, if you're volunteering to go into one of the K4 buildings, obviously we're not trying to make it look the same at the high school. It's going to be a little more, I suppose, adultish at the high school than it will be in a K4. And it's nice that, they recognize that the materials are a little bit different, how you approach things are a little bit different. And of course, the hope is that that all this kind of plugs in with what the principal desires for the program as well. So we are on the front end of this, and we'll have some more conversations as our own in our team to kind of set those expectations as well. But yeah, we certainly want to make sure the folks coming in, understand they're going into a school building to help with students, and there's a level of restraint that probably comes with that. But
All right, and the other question I had, and I think I understand the answer, is that the building principal would be the person that would have supervision and would be the point of contact for volunteers.
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. There is, as I mentioned, the team lead would serve as kind of a liaison between the principal and myself, to take some of that burden off the principal, to not necessarily have to get in the weeds with volunteers all the time. But the short answer is yes. As is the case with any, if it's a PTO member or something coming in, they would certainly need to be in concert with the principal on everything in the building. So, again, that's one of the things we hope to establish in those initial meetings, is so everyone understands kind of the way to go there.
Yeah, when I looked at this, you were kind enough to send things out ahead of time, and I appreciate that. I was really intrigued by this, and I know that, like many of the things that we do in our district, which are new to our district, we try it, we evaluate, we change, we modify, we learn, and to make it our own program and make sure it fits the needs of our students, and that it's overall benefit, providing the benefit that we would like to see. So I'm excited to see what this is going to look like as we go forward. I know that there will certainly be some modifications and changes and some bumps and things along the road, but I think it's a really interesting opportunity on multiple levels And I'm really excited for it, so thank you.
I think it provides a really nice opportunity for us, and if we get 100 volunteers, then that's great. And if we get 10, we'll hopefully they'll return and promote the program. So I think it's a lot of potential for us.
I think this is a wonderful idea. I think it's great to get the dads involved, especially at the lower grade levels. Typically, it's usually the moms. It's a great way to get dads into the schools beyond, Donuts with Dads. So I'm super excited about it. I love the fact that it's going all the way from kindergarten to high school levels. And I think it will help create some understanding of what it's like to be a student in school today with the community or with the family group.
Yeah, I just follow up with Nan. I completely agree. It definitely meets our strategic direction. 2 points of the community partnerships, increasing our parent and caregiver involvement, and under safety and wellness, those positive relationships. I do have 2 questions. My first question is, how will volunteers be equipped to meet the social emotional needs of some of our students?
That's a good question. I think it comes back a little bit to the initial training, training. The meetings that we have on that 8th, 9th, and 10th are sort of, it's like the kickoff meeting. We'll get folks signed up and make sure that people want to participate in that. The next phase of that, obviously, is folks have to go through the screening, the background check. And the next phase of that is one-on-one conversations with volunteers who come in. I'm going to be honest with you, I might defer to some of my colleagues on the best way to approach the idea of the social emotional needs and what materials might give them. There is some of that in the Watchdogs materials.
The only thing I would add, in my experience, I had this program when I was principal, and one of the most important parts of it was the ability to get the kid to someone who could help, right? So if they saw a student was struggling, that they were able to be there and lend a hand to take them to the guidance counselor or to take them to a principal and have that conversation. From the get-go, we wouldn't want to have a parent put in the position where they're maybe giving advice or anything of that nature, but it's really about increased visibility, building a few more assets in a student's bank of assets, and then we could integrate more training later as we develop some people who are maybe kind of, what happened in my previous experiences, you kind of got regulars, people who worked maybe different hours or had some flexibility with their schedule, and then you can do some things, even like we've talked about, some of our intervention academic programs are scripted, so we could get to the point where we're actually building more banks of academic support as well. So I think that'll all be a part of that creation. But the first step is just to create that, here's another adult that cares about me or someone else that I have access to, and they can help me get to where I want to go.
That kind of leads to my last question is, what will be the level of intentionality of engagement with students who may be in the most need of positive influence?
Do you mean
so we all know that in some of our schools there's students who can really use some tender love and care. So what's the level of intentionality of kind of the volunteers that come in, kind of connecting those two? Yes.
I understand now. I think, first of all, that going back to the principal and making sure there's a match between that volunteer and that group of kids. Not every volunteer would be a great match with those kids. So I think there's going to have to be some, and that's not a judgment on anyone, right? So I think we're going to have some filter on the front end. I think the goal is, let's get it up and running, see how people want to be involved, and then there's the opportunity that we can say, okay, you guys seem to really work with maybe struggling kids, and you guys seem to like the quiet kids. Maybe we can build some modules with Mark around, okay, this could be a group that you work with a guidance counselor. I don't think we want to put the person in a position to sit down with a group of kids and give advice or, like I kind of said before, or really be the, end all. We're not looking for that type of responsibility at this point. That would be, in my mind, more like a big brothers, big sisters. That what happens is you get a schedule when you come in the door, and that schedule is pretty tight. And so, from helping out in the office at the beginning of the day with kids, especially at the high school level, maybe kids who are coming in late, working, giving passes, making rounds in the building, checking door locks. That was one of the biggest benefits as a high school principal. And in the elementaries, what we saw in our district is that dad's wearing that shirt, and other kids are like, hey, who's your kid, right? Who's your child? And so it really created some opportunities for them. Oh, my student's a first grader. Well, I had that teacher last year. Just more adult presence and connections. I don't know that we're maybe looking, to go into any deep conversations, or if that makes sense.
I think the dads are just there to be dads, right?
Yeah,
they just want to carry
visibility
that
on
role.
the playground. Yeah, but I think we do think that there are some opportunities for interventions and building some, connections. But we also have privacy things we're going to have to talk about with parents, right? And volunteers. Like, if a kid's in crisis, you can't leave here and talk about that at the neighborhood watch and some things like that, because we do have kids who are vulnerable, and we want them to build trust. And so there will be a sensitivity type part of that as well. Yep.
And I don't know entirely what to expect, but I know my hope from the beginning, since we started talking about this, was you get folks who enjoy it and want to come back and become regulars in that, even if, and by regular, that could be once a week, once a month, I don't know. But, and then I think a lot of those opportunities, those relationships and a lot of those opportunities build up. And it's interesting how this stuff kind of plays out. I had, without, advertising any of this, I've had people reach out to me this summer, obviously, I think, for things that have happened recently, and want to come in and help. So it's a good time, is what I'm saying. I think the time is right to really kind of invest in that desire, so.
I think we probably have like 4 people. Do you need a volunteer sign-up sheet for our dad figures?
That's right.
There's your first 4 volunteers.
The preliminary, our top watchdogs, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
Okay.
right.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited too. Appreciate that. Okay, and that's the end of your report,
Yes.
right? All right. So, Mr. Johnson, Treasurer's report.
Okay, before I get into the presentation, just a couple quick items. One, you should have received an email earlier this week from the state auditor. So our fiscal year 21 audit just got completed. They're a little late, later than normal. They just like everyone else, they're having staffing issues and everything. So we've got that. Our audit report was clean audit, no significant issues. But if you have any questions on anything they sent, just shoot me an email, give me a call, and we can talk about that. Secondly, our annual Booster Best Practices meeting for boosters and PTOs is going to be August 15th, so I've sent an email out regarding that. So June 30 was the end of fiscal year 22, so I've got an update on our permanent improvement forecast. The next slide there, James. So looking at our revenue, total revenue for the year, last year was $6.2 million. That was right around $150,000 over projections. So projections were pretty much right on, but a little bit higher, so that was good news. Looking at the breakdown, real estate taxes make up $3.7 million. Public utility personal property tax came in at $829,000. That was one of the areas we were up. We were $85,000 over projections for that. Homestead and rollback, $244,000. The TIF revenue was $1.15 million. That was actually down by $100,000 compared to projections. There were some decreases in valuations in some of the TIF areas. And then the other $280,000. That was actually up $155,000 compared to projections. That's kind of an area that there's some different things in there that can change. So two main things. One, our stadium donations is a big part of that. The stadium donations sometimes will cross over fiscal years. So the reason it was up for the donations was we received, looking at calendar year versus fiscal year, so we got a couple big donations, so we really got two in the same fiscal year, if that made sense. I don't think I said that very clear. And then the other big increase that we weren't anticipating was the bus accident that we had last year. We got a $94,000 insurance settlement for that, so that was in there as well. Next slide, thank you. Looking at expenditures, total expenditures for fiscal year 22 were $7.94 million. I break these down into these various categories. One of the bigger chunks there is maintenance, which is kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different categories. Some of the big ticket items in there, we replaced boilers at Naven and Edgewood Elementaries right around $300,000. We mentioned we're doing the roof at East Elementary. That project was really crossed over 2 fiscal years. So the first, about half of the project was done in last fiscal year. That was about $167,000. It's actually, I think, just finished up or really close to finishing up right now as we speak. We replaced cafeteria tables at a couple buildings. That was about $84,000. And really after that, there weren't really any real big ticket items, just a lot of things that really add up that are, significant costs, but not really major, like, we're replacing mowers, mulch at all the playgrounds. You're talking $23,000 in mulch when you're, putting that kind of that amount of mulch in the district. Water fountains with filters, a lot of flooring in the district. One of the items we talked about last year, I think, was air conditioning in the Raymond cafeteria. That actually did not make it into the fiscal year 22, but that actually should be completed soon. So you'll see that in the fiscal 23 update. Looking down there to technology is about $1.2 million. The biggest chunk of technology, as usual, is going to be our Chromebook replacement for our one-to-ones for students. Another big ticket item there for technology was the implementation of interactive TVs at the elementaries. So I talked to Tom to get some more details about that. So we had a lot of the elementaries, a lot of the smart boards that were in place were no longer functioning and in need of replacement. The ones that were still functioning were removed and put into other areas in the district, such as Buncehold, where the smart boards were needed. But these interactive TVs have a lower cost of ownership. So whereas those smart boards, you're having to buy bulbs to replace into the projector, sometimes you're having to replace the board if that kind of starts to malfunction. Whereas TVs, there's no replacing bulbs. They should last longer, and they actually come with a 5-year warranty. So there were some good things with that. Curriculum, we spent $407,000. The big majority of that was for the science adoption. There were some much smaller items in there as well. Next year, with the curriculum money, we'll be looking at the social studies adoption. Not much in the way of asphalt this year, only last year, $88,000. Athletics, that's much bigger than normal. We're a little over $1 million there. That's the high school gym project where we did the bleachers, the HVAC, and the new floor. The loan repay there, $613,000. So there's 2 different items in there. One is the stadium loan repayment. So that's $458,000. The other remaining $155,000 is an older loan that we've probably talked about in the past, but that's the loan that was taken out, I guess, probably 25 years ago. That was for the current central office and the receiving center. So that actually will be paid off this current school year. Fiscal 23, I think, will be the last payment for that. So that'll be some good news. Then you've got the other category. That's a little bigger than normal this year at over $3 million because of the $2.7 million advance repayment back to the general fund. So that was done in fiscal 22 is the main chunk in there. Other items in there, you've got our county auditor fees for the real estate tax collections, and our copiers, our district copiers across all buildings come out of there. It's about $140,000 per year. And finally, transportation, $423,000 this year that we purchased the 3 buses as well as 1 van. And then also with that insurance payment, we kind of got a freebie in there as well. So we had 1 bus that was, to my understanding, I think it was a slightly older bus. So, I mean, I guess it was not a great thing that had happened, but we did get a new bus out of it. So that was good. Next slide. So, I'd like to mention, this is a 20-year forecast, so it's, even a 5-year forecast is pretty difficult. So with the 20-year, you definitely have to have a lot of flexibility. As I noted in there, we've got that $2.7 million advance repaid in fiscal 22, so that was good news. It kind of showed the strength of that fund that we were able to do that as early as we did. Speaking of flexibility, the stadium loan repayment, we've talked in the past a lot about the idea that we set that loan up so that we could pay it off after 5 years to save interest costs. But actually, we may be in a unique position because when we got that loan, we bid that out to get the best interest rates possible. So we got an interest rate of 3%. So when it comes time to repay that, if that were today, we would probably not repay it because we can actually get higher than 3% on our investments. So we're kind of in a good spot there. So we'll see where we are when that actually time comes. That will be in fiscal 24, I believe, when we could opt to pay it off if we wanted to. We have inflation assumptions throughout the forecast. One of the big areas where that has come into play is buying our school buses. I think when we created this forecast, a new school bus cost, close to $80,000. I think now that number's up to about $100,000. So that's where that inflation number that we've got built in has really come in handy. That we're able to, do that without saying, well, buses went up. So we're not going to do any asphalt this year, So we're able to absorb those inflationary costs without impacting other areas of the forecast. And also, we're able to adjust projects as needed. A big thing I've talked about there was, we really did a good job of catching up on our asphalt. When I got here, we were, I think, really behind. We're really fully caught up now. So where we had some really large numbers assumed for asphalt in this particular year, we dropped that way down, which allowed us to do the high school gym renovation. So that just a good thing of the forecast and having that flexibility. And finally, just looking at the ending balance throughout the forecast, and again, I'll just say those out numbers are, a lot could change those things. But if you look at fiscal 21, we really jumped up there. We were close to a $6 million balance. That's what allowed us to do the gym project as well as the renovation project at East that we're talking about. You're going to see, obviously, it's going to drop down with the advance repayment and then those renovation projects that we talked about. We're right around a $300,000 balance there for a couple years. That could change significantly whether we decide to pay off that stadium loan or if we decide that we want to hold off on that. And really a good thing with that loan is that flexibility. One, if interest rates make it to where it's beneficial to not pay it off, then we can do that and have a larger balance. But on the flip side, if there's some, major roof caves in or something like that, we also could decide not to pay it off right then, just so that we've got a larger balance if it were to be needed. That's all I've got for that. If you have any questions.
Any questions?
I do.
Sure.
Can we go back to the expenses for fiscal year 22? Okay. Looking at that $300K balance for fiscal year 24 to 26,
you talking ending balance?
Yes, the ending balance. So that's after
Okay. Yep.
all expenses are paid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not what's in the fund. It's after everything's paid out. That's our floor.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's not, we're not saying, well, we've only got 350, so we can't do this, that, or the other. That's after we've done everything we needed to do and are planning to do, then we've got 350. And we did not go in and make any cuts to get that from 0 up to 350. It's 350 without changing anything.
Do we have like a board policy or anything that says in this fund, this is our minimum
No, we do
required? Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for that, for all those updates. Appreciate that. Okay. I guess it's time for my report. So we did have a community coffee this past Sunday. We had one family come in to talk to us, and it was really very timely. They're very supportive of adding SROs to our elementary buildings on a full-time basis. So as you all know, later tonight, we will be voting on a resolution of support for our current SRO program, as well as extending it to our elementary buildings. We had a great conversation with them, and Mr. Smith also suggested that they might want to volunteer with our levy committee too. So they were receptive to that. But anyways, it's always nice to have people come in and talk. And I know I shared their information with Diane too, just so that somebody could kind of reach out to them and make sure that they're updated on what's happening right now. Because we said that still things are just kind of getting started in those conversations. So that's the report for the community coffee. Then also, since our last regular meeting, we did have our special meeting on June 22nd to hold our end-of-year evaluations of our superintendent and treasurer. And as we all know, we are required by law to evaluate them at least once per year. And then as a board, we felt that the goals that we had agreed upon with our governance team were met this past year. Very happy with the work of our superintendent and treasurer. And we also acknowledge just how challenging this past year was for everyone. And finally, I think one thing that we pointed out was one of the goals was surrounding our strategic direction revision, and just how what a nice process that was. It was a great way to end the year, and it's really got us ready now to think about goals for this coming year, as we can tell already with the presentation with Ryan tonight. It's just that kind of seamless transition from the past strategic plan to this new revision. So I really appreciate all of the work that both of you did last year, and couldn't be happier. And so after the end of year evaluations, it's time to set goals for the new year. So I have asked Diane and Todd to share their goals with the board by August 1st. Then I'd like to schedule a special meeting. I don't know if we could, was going to send out a text, but looking at maybe August 8th, where we can discuss those goals for the coming year. Do we, have any questions about them? Are we comfortable that the goals are aligned with our district strategy, et cetera? We also need to hold a self-evaluation of our board and talk about our work plan. And finally, just as a reminder, previously with our evaluation schedule, we've done the mid-year evaluation around January and end of year in June or July. But we've agreed, because of some webinar that I had attended, that we're going to try something a little bit more different, or a little different this year, and have some informal checkups every few months, maybe 1 or 2 board members come over to the board office and just check in and see how things are going with the goals. And then we'll do that formal end of year in June or July still. August 20, I just emailed something to you today. I know we kind of got a flurry of emails about different things going on, but OSBA Central Region does have a legislative open house on August 23rd at Tolles Technical Center from 7 to 8. It's free, but you do need to register if you're interested in attending that. And finally, I just wanted to comment. I wanted to congratulate our Invent to Prevent team. They presented to us last month. They went to Washington, D.C., and if anybody watched them present, and I don't know if you watched any of the other schools present, but they just blew it out of the water, I thought. They were just the level of detail and thought that went into their presentation and their games and everything was just amazing. So just wanted to congratulate them.
I would also add, Mrs. Devine, I think that their excitement is not over. There's a couple big things on the cusp that hopefully we can make a press release with shortly. So
Excellent.
Stay tuned.
Well, and I know that there's a new committee, the High Five React, that's on our agenda tonight.
Yes.
So, and I saw one of the members of the team at the Friday Nights Uptown, and so we had a chance to talk a little bit, and I can tell you there's a lot of excitement. So, yeah, that's wonderful. And that's it for my report. So, student achievement report. Nan.
Okay, good evening. I forwarded an email that had several attachments to all the board members. On August 10th, there's going to be a summer student achievement liaison event. It's going to be a virtual event, so I'll be attending that. In addition, in the email that's attached, there's a OSBA podcast, and this particular one is on Dr. Paul Johnson discussing the role of the school board as it relates to student achievement. And I listened to it. It's actually really good. So if you have time, you're driving in the car, I would recommend you click on that link and listen to that podcast. Just a reminder that August 5th is going to be the Ohio tax holiday. So back to school shopping. Everyone get out there and shop on August 5th. Early, because it gets busy that day. And then just a couple things from the Success newsletter that we kind of do a little bit in Marysville School District. There's an article related to therapy dogs reducing kids' stress levels during study. I thought that's very interesting. I noticed that when we're at the early college high school, and they have that Mercy's there. That dog really makes an impact on the anxiety level of the students. It's kind of interesting to watch. And then also something that I've been encouraging, students building IKEA furniture as a kind of engineering test. And anyone that's put together IKEA furniture knows that this is an engineering test, okay? I put together 2 apartments full of IKEA furniture, but it's, they're doing it, the career and technical students are doing it to help out a disability program within the school, but kind of a great opportunity that maybe we could pursue. And that's all I have.
Great, thanks for all that information. Let's see, next report, legislative report, Mr. Smith.
With the legislature in recess, there's not much to report. I'm trying to set up meetings with our 2 elected legislators. There's some things that I've been thinking about a lot, and I've indicated vouchers and a whole bunch of issues that I've kind of lumped together in my head as local control and vouchers, where the state is going, that could significantly impact funding for public schools in Ohio and would not be a real positive thing for our district. I've provided some information about a lawsuit that has been filed in that area and some background information on that. And on local control, a lot of things which the state legislature is talking about have in the past been issues that local school boards addressed. Questions about what was going on in the classroom, how curriculums were put together and so forth. And so just trying to make legislators aware that we have responsibility, we're thoughtful people, and the uniqueness, I wrote in here, what did I say? That every community, thus every school district is different. Local control provides for accommodating diverse and complex educational expectations. So just encouraging them to trust that we can do a good job of dealing with things in our school district. So,
thank you. I did want to comment. Some of the things that you attached there about the vouchers, and I think we all get these emails. Should we consider joining that coalition? Because there's a group of districts that have joined a coalition with this with litigation against the vouchers, I believe. And I don't know if you have any opinions, Todd, or, what the cost benefit would be to that. It was something, something we can discuss, obviously, next meeting or something, but those were just some questions that came to me.
I can send you some information about it.
Okay, yeah. Because I don't know what the feelings are of the rest of these, of the board here, if there'd be any interest or not. Just kind of wait and see what Todd sends us, and then maybe discuss it next month a little bit as part of the legislative report.
In reading Dick's summary, which was very good, there's enough support to pass vouchers in Ohio. And it looks like they may try and do it through the biennial budget, where they attach a whole bunch of different legislation. So maybe even some of these local control issues, they'll pass them all under the budget. So we're looking at some major impact items for school districts, and that the community as a whole needs to be aware of the impact of some of these requirements that the state is putting on to local schools. So it would probably be a long discussion if we get into it now, but.
I provided a little background, just very briefly, that, it started out as a very small program to help students from low-income families find educations outside of the Cleveland School District, which was not meeting their needs. Recent changes have changed the rules to qualify for that. And in a news article that was published in Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, University Heights City School District had 95% of the students that were using vouchers had never attended the school district. The vouchers went to students whose parents had the resources to have them already in the private school. And so there was a news item that came out that I think we all got where in West Virginia, the court upheld the language in their Constitution that was taken from the Ohio Constitution, and said that the state legislature did not have the authority to issue any vouchers. And so we'll see where the lawsuit goes. It's certainly something that's going to impact, if it expands as some legislators would like to see it, it's certainly going to impact every school district in the state of Ohio, and not in a positive way.
Thanks so much for all that information. Okay, next, Safety and Drug Committee report, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you. So the Union County Drug Free Coalition did meet last month. I did attend virtually, and then I had to leave the meeting early. There was a lot of discussion shared, but nothing that no new information, I should say. The TPLA students, we're still looking to maybe possibly welcome them next meeting.
Yes.
There was some schedule conflicts for July, and so they're not presenting today, but hopefully we'll get them in to present their findings over their study. And then my last thing is the Ohio Department of Public Safety is doing their Ohio School Safety Center, Ohio School Safety Summit. Of course, it's all day for 3 days in the middle of the week, so I will not be able to go. But there's some great agenda items on there covering mental health, public safety, some best practices for community leaders and school officials. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much. Okay, business part of our meeting. I would accept a motion to approve draft minutes from our June 16th regular meeting and our June 22nd special meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage, second by Mr. Smith. Any comments, corrections, revisions to the minutes? If not, roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer CFO action items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Keck. Any comments, Todd?
Just a couple highlights. As I noted before, June 30 was the end of the fiscal year, so that cash flow is the last cash flow of fiscal year 22, so those are actuals now. Not a lot of surprises compared to our, where we were trending. The biggest item there on the revenue side, catastrophic cost reimbursement is something we get each year in June. That is for special needs students where the cost of educating that student exceeds a certain level. Not off the top of my head, it varies based on what the educational need is and those things, but it's very high numbers. And that came in $80,000 higher than it was last year, so that was an increase compared to projections. The main reason there is just a change in the way that the state funds that program. Also, I would note on the appropriations adjustments, that large increase in Fund 507, which is our various ESSER funds. That's not new money. That's allocation that was not spent last year, so being basically reappropriated this year. And that's it.
Okay. We'd like to point out that on that cash flow, pretty darn impressive with your budgeting there, receipts within just a little more than 1% off and 0.07% off on expenditures. So
Thank you.
great job. Any questions of Todd? Nope.
Does the ESSER fund money have a deadline?
Yes, there's a lot of different ESSER grants to keep track of now, so each one has its own deadline. ESSER 1, the deadline is actually, I believe, this coming September, but we've already spent all of that. ESSER 2, I believe, is next September, but we just recently finished that one up. We now have ARP ESSER, which we've got until, I think, September 24 to spend. We should probably spend all of that this fiscal year, and now we also have those two new state ESSER. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know their deadline. Those are relatively new, and we've got a plan for that, so we're definitely keeping an eye on that.
Good question. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smith? Yes.
Mr. Keck? Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the resolution supporting the SRO program.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. I will go ahead and read that resolution. It says, whereas Marysville Schools takes student safety seriously and provides a safe environment conducive for learning for our students, and whereas student safety is everyone's responsibility, and whereas Marysville Schools has taken many steps to ensure a safe place for our students, and whereas Marysville Schools is committed to ongoing collaborations with the Marysville Police Department, the Union County Sheriff's Department, and the Ohio State Highway Patrol in order to review and improve safety across the district, and whereas Marysville Schools has benefited from a strong partnership with the City of Marysville to provide school resource officers in our intermediate, middle, and high school buildings and increased presence in our elementary buildings, and whereas Marysville Schools and the City of Marysville currently operate under a memorandum of understanding that provides guidelines and policies relevant to the performance of the school resource officer as a joint cooperative effort, and whereas the mission of the SRO program is to promote school safety by building a positive school climate in which everyone feels safe and students are supported to succeed, and whereas the SRO program also seeks to prevent and reduce violent crime committed by and against youth in our community, whereas the SRO program establishes a trusting channel of communication with students, parents, and teachers, and establishes regular feedback opportunities, and whereas the SRO program supports creating partnerships with behavioral health and other care providers in the community for student and family referral, and whereas Marysville Schools and Marysville's police and fire divisions coordinate crisis planning and training, including lockdown procedures, to ensure consistency throughout the district, Now therefore be it resolved by this Marysville Exempted Village School District Board of Education that this board reaffirms its commitment to the School Resource Officer Program and strongly supports extending our current collaborative agreement to include our elementary schools. Be it further resolved that this board believes we all play an active and important role in keeping our schools and communities safe. And finally, we're authorizing our treasurer to direct and forward copies of this resolution to members of Marysville City Council, Marysville Police Chief Tony Brooks, Marysville City Manager Terry Emery, Union County Commissioners, and Union County Sheriff Jamie Patton. Comments? Questions?
I mean, we've had presentations concerning SRO programs, and when you visit the schools and you see what the SROs are doing, their value in the mentoring role is one of the most significant and most important functions that they serve. They are a great resource within the building for our students. If that was all they provided, it's kind of like the dogs program. That in itself makes this a well worthwhile program, and I look forward to being able to extend it.
Any other comments?
I look forward to partnering with the city law enforcement and county law enforcement moving forward in these negotiations to get a SRO officer in each school.
I think it's a fantastic program. I watched it at the high school, and students feel very, very comfortable coming up and talking to the officers and sharing maybe their daily problems and maybe some problems that we wouldn't be aware of otherwise that are happening in the community and that need police attention, and so that really helps out the community, I think. I just can't say enough about it. And I think in the elementary program, the more males, and I'm not trying to downgrade females, but the more males that kids have to talk to that are positive role models is just going to help our community. And that goes with that program that Ryan was sharing with us. It's a great opportunity. And I also think that program is going to put more people in the school that can see what a great job the teachers are doing with students, and can share that with the community that may not ever see it.
I don't remember when I was in high school if we had a school resource officer. I do remember having a security guard by the lunchroom. When Sue and I did our building visits, something that did stick out to me and captured a memory at the early college high school, we saw one of our SROs doing reading intervention with a student. And I believe the Mercy, is that the other officer's name? So the dog, yes. I don't know if it's an officer or a dog, but that was, the school was secure and there's engagement. And that's what the SRO program's about. And even shortly after we left, there was an incident in the community and that school had to be on lockdown. Well, I had no concern because I knew there was already law enforcement there. And so this is not just passing a resolution to say we're doing something. I believe some of our parents have asked us to take action. And the decision, do we arm staff or allow staff to opt into a program, or do we do a proven program that's the school resource officer? This is not a hard decision. The school resource officer is the proven program, and it does work. And if anyone questions that if it does work, I ask them to visit our schools and ask our students and ask the teachers, does it work? Is it working for you? And so I support this, and I look forward to this collaboration between us and the community and the city.
All right. How about a roll call, please?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve several different HR action items. I'm not going to read through all of them.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. Any comments or questions?
I would just note the commitment that the Divine family has made to our school district in a number of different ways, and thank them for taking on all those different responsibilities.
Roll call, please.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Abstain. Motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion, well, I don't know, I don't think we motion on this one, right? Because this section here is our public hearing for the 2023-2024 draft school calendar. So we received this draft for that school year, and as part of our policy, we take 2 months to go, well, at least 2 months to go over this, and just kind of pointing out that the start date for that year is August 16th, I believe. And I don't know, Diane, do you have any notes on this? Sorry to catch you off guard like that. But anyways, it shows the start and end dates. It also says that we have 186 school days on here. We always have plenty of hours compared to the state minimum. If anybody, has any comments or has questions about it, anytime over the next month or so, contact Mr. Langhouse, I believe. Okay, yes, contact Mr. Langhouse. If you see something, you say, wait, have you considered this? Or any kinds of questions that way. Not any comments from the board looking at the calendar? It's pretty similar to past.
Yeah, I asked the question, and I think, I don't know if, Diane, if you want to just go over that. I asked, how did we involve our staff and our parents? And if you want to share that.
Certainly, we have a committee that we work on, and then they generate several versions, and sometimes I think Jonathan brings me 95 versions, right? But those are shared with staff, get feedback, and they zero it down to a final calendar or two, and ultimately it takes me bringing it to you. I don't think I've ever overturned a calendar that's come from the committee. There's no real reason to, but that leeway I think is in there as well. So it does go out through buildings departments. We take feedback from families. We did a large survey a few years back, and honestly there's not a ton of flexibility because of guidelines we have to meet through our negotiated agreement and with the school calendar and requirements. So we did hear, really coming out of the pandemic, concerns about keeping the Wednesday prime times with family schedules. So you see that there are not those this year. So we've kind of evolved over time through, parent input and building that with staff. So, and the process is the same every year. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was good education for me to understand that, and building this. I know sometimes, why do we have school this day or not that day? But a lot of work has gone in behind this calendar, so thank you.
Sure. Okay, so then we will move on to our superintendent items. I would accept a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keck. Ms. Allen, would you like to point anything out in here?
Sure. I mean, really, I kind of talked to you already about our number of positions that are still open, so you're going to see several hires. Right. Volunteers, we have first read policies, overnight trip, bus bids, student teachers. We also have something that it's an impracticality approval. I think we've had a handful over the years, but basically it's more of a feasibility of transportation. The state allows for us to have the board approve those. So for families that might be, the distance traveled, or we don't have other routes in that direction. And so we have one of those on for this month as well. So I would also say all in the same agenda, we have the early college high school principal as well as the early college assistant principal, because we had some administrative shifts. So you talk that pretty quick moving in a month to get both those lined up. But pending your recommendation, I'll make comments on that, or your approval.
Okay. Yeah, and I just want, on those first read of the policies, again, we do this over 2 months, so I didn't really see anything too major on those. It was basically talking about our OSBA partnership and some updates, because OSBA is no longer with the National School Boards Association. So it was highlighting the fact that now OSBA is part of the new, I can't remember what that name is, Mr. Smith. I don't know if you remember it or not. I've got it somewhere.
It is, where is it? The Consortium of State School Board Associations.
Right. Thank
And
you.
I was going to just make the comment that there's a great deal of flexibility in terms of how the state organization participates, but also how local school boards can participate with that. And I think it's significant because there will be national meetings, or not, these won't be national, they will be consortium meetings that'll be held that will touch on various subjects where members of this board or our school district might want to attend. And there's not plans this year, but moving forward, there will be some lobbying opportunities that will be created also. So.
Okay, great. Let's see. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on this?
The only thing I would say, and Jonathan, make sure I'm saying this right, most of the policy are driven by changes in state law, almost without exception. So.
Yep. I would notice I see a student teacher of Chloe Powers, recent graduate, is going to be a student teacher at Northwood. That's exciting. Okay, all right. If there are no other questions or comments.
Yeah, we've got a tremendous, as we start the school year, we always have long lists of people that are hired in extracurricular positions.
Oh, right, supplementals.
And as a school board, we have said in a variety of different ways that we want to create well-rounded students.
Right.
And I think extracurriculars is a very important part for many of our students to be well-rounded. And I got a note from my fraternity that talked about that and made a point of if you're not well-rounded, then you're like a flat tire. And you can have some difficulty. So the extracurricular program is significant and important. So.
Thank you. And that does remind me when you talk about the hires and stuff. I mean, for the people who are resigning or retiring, we thank them for their service. For the new hires, we're really excited to welcome them into our family. And I know we've got one potential switch in position sitting out here in the audience. So how about if we have a roll call and we can make it official?
Ms. Sapp?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. And welcome to principalship at the Early College High School. Okay, with that, we are to comments and questions from board members. I'll go ahead and start with you, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you. So congratulations on the new position, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in our district. I look forward to starting the new year. I do want to take a couple moments to kind of go over some, I guess, housekeeping items on my part. When I joined the board, I met with everyone, and I asked, give me feedback. I'm open to feedback. I want to be a competent, good board member. And I have gotten some feedback, some directly, some indirectly. And I want to first kind of write last meeting, I made a statement that said do more with less. And the context of that statement was really about housing offices in a certain building without doing renovations for now. But the way the statement was presented was if I was telling the district and the teachers to do more with less, which is not what my intended message was. So without that context, it sounded very harsh and it sounded like almost accusatory, and that was not my intention. I know our district and our staff work really hard within the resources that the community allots to make sure that our students have the best learning environment possible. And I did apologize to Diane and Todd almost immediately, probably the next morning after that reflection. And I just want to say that I will probably make some errors and some gaffes, right? But I will apologize and I will take ownership for that. And so to everyone who participates or listens to this meeting and heard that comment and had some concerns, it was a mistake on my part, and it will be a learning experience. Moving on, if I joining the board, I was currently serving on the City of Marysville's Planning Commission, and I've recently resigned, but during this process, there are some things that, as a board, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. Again, when I first joined the board, I said, hey, growth is one of our biggest opportunities and challenges from the district. I kind of want to be a bridge between the city and the district. When I was even applying for planning commission or for the school board appointment, I checked, I made a call to Terry Emery and Tim Asnier, the city law director, to see if there was a compatibility issue or a potential conflict of interest. They researched and provided attorney general opinions, and it was deemed that there is no, I can serve in both roles, and if there was an agenda item that could present a conflict of interest, I could consult with the city law director and recuse myself from that vote and not participate in the conversations. And I did communicate that to Diane shortly after my appointment, and saying I intend to serve in both roles because there's nothing prohibiting me from doing that. Months went by, and I didn't receive any feedback, negative or positive, either way. I did try to continue to make sure information was going to our superintendent and Todd, because I really beforehand, I wanted to make sure that our developers had those conversations, because growth is important, and you can't predict, you can't plan for the future if you don't know what's being developed, right? And so I took that, that was the role I played. Then there was the Kroger TIF, and there was a council member who serves on the advisory role of the Treasurer's Finance Committee. It's an advisory role. Recused himself from a vote about the TIF because we sent a statement. And I was at the meeting. I was at the city council meeting when that happened. I talked to the city law director just to say, hey, can you walk me through how there was a need for a recusal here, and I'm good. And the statement I received, in summary, was that since there was an interest in the advisory role to make decisions and help guide Todd in his role to make decisions that are in the best interest of the district, and there's a negative financial impact on that agenda item, it was in best for the council member to recuse himself, and that's what he did. And then furthermore, if a district would take a position or there was some kind of financial interest, something that was attached to an agenda item that I would oversee it in my role in Planning Commission, that's would be an opportunity to recuse myself. I did speak with Diane the next day following up that conversation, and we decided together that we would get a legal opinion from our district just to check and make sure that what we're receiving, and I think I even forwarded the Attorney General opinions over that I received to Diane. In my view, I thought we had a call, and we did have a call, and I thought the matter was kind of settled, and just evaluate, just as I was doing, evaluate the votes, the applications that come before me. And it seemed like a couple months, but the first week of June, I received a legal opinion. And I received a legal opinion, and it said that there is no prohibition. Evaluate the vote, evaluate things that come before me. And in our correspondence with Sue, just Sue and Diane, I was given 3 options: resign from Planning Commission, resign from school board, or evaluate and seek legal consult on each individual item. I've already communicated, and I felt that I had legal consult with our city law director, because the city law director represents members of the Planning Commission, to make sure those procedures are in proper in order and to answer any questions of a conflict of interest. There were several conversations between Sue and I, that we're asking about, how are you sure? Are you sure there is no conflict of interest? How are you sure that you can evaluate? And I believe we saw that issue differently. And so in the paper today, you saw that the quote was pressured to resign from Planning Commission, and I think that's accurate, even if it wasn't intended. Something that I do need to apologize for in this is there's the legal opinion. I shared it with my resignation, and it was labeled confidential. I viewed myself as the client because it wasn't board business, it wasn't shared with the board. I viewed myself as it was about me, not about anyone else in the district. That's how I viewed it. My view didn't matter. It was labeled confidential. And I shared the confidential document, and that goes against our code of ethics. And for that, I just, that was improper on my part. My personal views are my personal views, but without going through the proper procedure to give that document over, I do want to just be clear and transparent that did happen on my end. And for that, going against the policy, I do apologize. The issue of reaching out or speaking with the media, we do have a policy that says that only the board president speaks to the media on matters of the board. In my view, the issue was about me, not about the board members or the business of the board. It was about my role as a public servant on both Planning Commission and school board. And so I felt that I didn't conflict that, but I also didn't check. And I won't say I will apologize for that, because I think I did what I needed to do in trying to be transparent as a role of the public official, making sure everything that I have done to prevent appearance of a conflict of interest. I wanted that to be clear and transparent to the public. And I think that's the role of a public official, is to be accessible to the media. That's my personal view. Third, my last, that's that point. So that's kind of my view, and those are my thoughts on those things. We're moving on. I'm moving on, and my focus to build trust with the administration, to build trust with my board members and our staff, and I want to put that issue to bed, and I want to move on, because we have actual things that I need to be focused on that are about the district business, and that's kind of how I arrived to those decisions. I think that's all I want to share tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Move on to Mr. Smith.
I've already mentioned all the extracurricular positions and so forth. I would point out that on social media, a lot of our teachers are posting the kinds of things that they're doing this summer. And I would, Luke Sundermeyer was mentioned earlier, but he went to Washington, D.C. and participated in a White House history program. And that's an example of one of our teachers going, spending, I don't know, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, whatever the program was, and expanding their experiences, expanding their knowledge, and that will be a great asset when he returns to the classroom. And he is just one of many teachers that are spending their times working to improve their education, working to increase their knowledge. If you drive past any of the elementaries, they're already in there working on their classrooms, putting things up and so forth. Sometimes I think the perception is that teachers get a summer off. It doesn't tend to work that way. And the teachers that we have don't take it that way. So I hope teachers are able to enjoy their summer. I applaud them for all of the extra stuff that they're doing. We also have students that are experiencing a lot of things. We had some students that just returned from, I think it's Spain. And again, I'm not sure how long they were there, but I know that their experiences will enrich their lives going forward. We have some students, both male and female students, that were in Fargo, North Dakota at a national wrestling competition. And that experience they will bring back. Lots of good memories, but also new information and be better for that. And our band leaders went to a band leadership camp. And so those are some examples. We've got students that are doing all sorts of things this summer. Education and learning continues. Thank you.
Mr. Keck.
As usual, I have nothing.
Ms. Savage.
Okay, I want to, first of all, congratulate Jennifer Hinderer and your cohort in crime, Lisa Nemeth, as your assistant vice principal. I think that's going to be a very exciting combination for early college, high school. And I think the teachers and staff are going to be really invigorated by this change. Last month we celebrated Ken Chafin moving to the high school and Katie Morgan following her and making a trio with Sean Williams there. So it's a great place to start the year. It's kind of a big reset. I almost want to knock on wood after I say that after last year, but we've all been through a lot, and this is a great reset. And the energy that's coming into the district with the new positions and the new teachers, I'm very excited, and I think it's spelling very positive outcomes for our students. I also kind of wanted to point out the huge number of coaches and assistant coaches that are being approved today. The number of opportunities that are available to students in Marysville is almost unparalleled. That's just sports, athletics, and not to mention clubs and science and other areas that we have areas of focus. So opportunity abounds here in Marysville. And the last thing I just kind of wanted to say is I'm very excited about this, and I want all the board members to kind of reflect on, why it is we're here, what our focus is. We're focusing on the kids, creating the best experience for our students, and creating a happy working environment for our teachers and staff members. So, thanks.
Mr. Johnson.
Nothing for me.
Ms. Allen.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Well, I'm going to thank our presenters for the data presentation, for the dogs presentation. I really enjoyed seeing just hearing about this new program and just excited about our data. And then finally, I would like to respond a little bit here to Mr. Ferguson's comments. I know this has been a really challenging and emotional past few days. I appreciate your honesty and sharing your thoughts. I know that feelings have been hurt, trust has been seriously damaged, but I was reminded of Scott Daly's comments from this year's Board Leadership Institute, where he talked about how events plus reaction equal outcomes. And I think right now we have a choice how we want to react to this situation. And I know, you felt the pressure, and I felt like I continued to say, my questions are coming from sincere concern for, whether or not somebody's going to think that there's a conflict of interest, or, even if you felt very comfortable in how you were doing things, I know how complex it can be. And I know how there's a lot of things in law that may not make sense, So again, I felt like it was coming from concern, and I'm sorry that you felt the pressure for it. But I apologize your honesty in sharing some of those other things, and because we do have a choice in how we want to react to this situation. My choice is to work hard to reestablish trust through honest conversation, ongoing training, and a sincere desire to do what's best for our students and district as a whole. Because I know as a board, our job is to be a cheerleader for the district, not to be a distraction. And I will commit to doing my best towards that goal, and I feel confident that the rest of the team feels the same way. So I continue to be very proud of everything that we're doing, and I'm an optimistic person, and I know, I know we're going to work through this, and we're all going to be better for it. So that is all that I've got. So with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck.
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries, and we are adjourned at 8:08. Thank you.